Hey everybody, before today's video gets started, just want to give you a heads up that today, the day this video releases, is Saturday, March 14th, and at 6 p.m. today, I have a small Etsy restock going live, pieces from my last kiln unloading video, some beautiful copper reds and purples and blues, and so just want to give you that heads up, and here's today's video. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to have a little wheelside chat and maybe talk about my roots in pottery, which started out as production. So let's go. Hey, I'm glad you're here today. Thank you for clicking on the video and joining in on this conversation, this wheelside chat. And I actually was just planning to make these vases or these pieces today, and I was like, man, I've got 100 of these vases today. I've got to flip that switch in my brain to go back to what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years, where I would throw production for other potters. Of course, the good side is now I'm doing it for me, but I have a wholesale order for these little pieces here, and these are actually going to be like candle votives. I've got a local company that wants to buy these, and they pour their own candles, and they've been working with another potter in our area and just wanted to switch up their product, their vessels that they pour their candles in. And so they had talked to me at the end of last year, and then they came by a couple days, or actually yesterday, and I had some samples made for them. You actually might have seen those in my recent kiln unloading video, and they came by and looked at those samples and loved them, and they picked two of the color combinations that I had tested, and I've got to make 100 of these or thereabouts, and half in each of those two colors. So it's funny, I used to talk about how I had this switch in my brain that when I went to work for other people and I would make production for other potters, I had this little switch in my brain that would just turn on, and I could just, I guess because of the years that I had, made production already, I had this, I could just turn on a podcast or some music or a video of something, and I could just pretty much just roll through whatever I was making, and I didn't have to, for the most part. I mean, there was certain shapes and designs that I had to make that I maybe had to think about a bit more, but for the most part, the stuff that I made for other potters, it really was just mass production in a way. In my brain, I could just flip that switch, and I didn't have to think too much about what I was doing to get them made. Especially once I got in a groove. And I've kind of already gotten to that point with these pieces. You can probably see I've already made over 40 of these out of the 100 or so that I'm going to make. And so once I get in that groove of repetitive motion over and over again, it's kind of gets, it is repetitious. But like I said, that side of my brain, I have that I have that switch in my brain that I can just kind of flip, and I don't get too hung up on things that maybe things that I'll do when throwing other pieces for myself. It's just different. I know, they're expecting a certain thing that I showed them. The only variation pretty much in what they're expecting is in the glazing. And even that is still kind of a production thing where I'm gonna do, it's a two glaze combination on one, and then one glaze. Both of them have my ash glaze on them, so it's two glazes on one, and then spray the ash on, and then one glaze on the other one and spray the ash glaze on. So even that will be a little bit of a production mode. But I guess, of course, if I'm throwing, bases or or other things like that. For myself, there's a lot more variables in there that, that I'm not making 100 of them, or I'm not even making 20 or 30 of the same thing. So the variables are a lot different. I'm probably thinking a lot more about how I'm going to finish those pieces. These are already kind of set in stone, what they're going to look like when they're done. All the variables that maybe are there when I'm making other pieces are kind of removed. So I kind of already know what's expected of me, even though now, like I said, I'm making them for myself. When I used to work production for other potters, it was all based on the amount of clay or the amount of pounds in each piece. And that was a good way to do it, because it taught me good motivation and work ethic, because I knew the harder I worked, the more money I would get paid. And that's in general, that's still true even working for yourself. Although at times I have to slow that pace down a little bit to make sure that, to make some of the things that I make, they're not as cut and dry as that. This one's got a little bit of air in it. I could feel that when I went to pull it up. We'll pull it up again and see if that's still there. If it is, I'll find it as it gets thinner. But that was a great thing for me to learn and to really hone in my skill at making. I've always said that, or not always said, but I've kind of learned that the fact that I've heard said that the repetition is the mother of all skill. And I think I even said in one of my previous videos, or maybe in my live stream, that I kind of view it as two different things. There's talent that I think you're born with, or that's God-given, however you want to see it. And then there's skill, which is kind of something that pretty much anybody who has a strong enough desire and will put the time in can develop. And I think those skills, you can develop in just about any aspect of life. Now, there are certain things, like athletic ability and certain things like that, and maybe how tall or short or big you are as a person. Those things you can't control, and those might affect, your ability in certain areas in life. But when it comes to, things that just about anybody could do, and pottery may not be one of those things. I think just about anybody who really wanted to could do it at a base level for sure, because the amount of hours you put in you can develop the skill just as well as anybody else. And yeah, if you have some artistic talent already, that's definitely going to help your process. But I think even if somebody just has a strong desire that they want to learn how to do it, they could. And I think all those years of me throwing production for other people just enhanced that skill that I think I already had, that I was born with, or that I learned at an early age, or that I developed at an early age. My mother was artistic, and I was into art from the time I was very young. So that's why I say I think talents are something that people are born with, because you can see it, and if you have kids, you kind of see it in them as well. At a very early age, and it's not necessarily something you taught them. They just gravitate towards things that they're interested in, or that they have a talent in, and it's really neat to start to see that. And then as you look back on your own life, hopefully you can find a talent, or that you've developed a skill in your life. And I know that actually it is kind of rare, honestly, and it's probably even more rare that somebody would find either find their talent or develop a skill, and then be able to turn that into their livelihood. I think that's another huge step, that if somebody can do that, and then there's kind of like a whole nother step on top of that, that the fact is, if they love what their talent or the skill that they developed is. Because I know some people that are excellent at, maybe sales or this or that or the other, but they may not just thoroughly love what they do. They're really good at it, but maybe they don't love that, and that would be a tough thing. At least from my perspective, it would be tough, because I thoroughly love what I do, and I'm just overjoyed and thrilled that I get to do what I do every single day. Now, not saying that there are days that I don't necessarily feel like doing what I'm doing. But those days are few and far between, and I'm very thankful for that. And here it is, like even today, it's probably 7 or 7:30 at night, and not that I'm neglecting my family, but I'm out here working, number one, because I've got this order, but number two, because I'm like, hey, I've got the energy and I've got the time, and my workshop is in my backyard, and I can do that, and I'm very, very thankful for that. You know, I'll still go in here in a little bit and either eat dinner with the family, or at least, if nothing else, help get the kids ready for bed and read to them at bedtime, and I'm very thankful that I get to do that, and I've been able thus far to make a living doing this, so I'm very thankful for that. So I guess to get to my my initial thing that I talked about as far as my roots, I guess I have been talking about it. But my roots in pottery are definitely in production. The very first shop that I ever worked at was very production oriented, and of course I was 16 years old, or the week before I turned 16 actually, when I started working there. And actually, you know, I feel pretty fortunate, especially looking back, that, you know, being 16, you're pretty, you know, you're still young, you're still very impressionable, and also you're wanting to make money, because, you know, you probably have either a car payment or insurance payment if your parents don't take care of that for you. And you know, I definitely enjoyed pottery, but you know, the job I had wasn't necessarily easy, but I loved what I was doing, and I loved the fact that I got to make pottery, and I got paid a decent amount at the time, even for back then. Just getting paid by the hour to do what I was doing, and I was, like I said, getting to do something I enjoyed. And it's so funny, because I guess out of, like I said, being a little naive, being young, being impressionable, you know, I was probably definitely not intimidated and not pressured into it, but you're more susceptible to the fact that, oh, you just can kind of gravitate to the fact of like, oh, this is just the way we do it. We just work our butts off making, you know, 100 pots a day, and that's just what's expected, and so that's just what you do, you know, and you try, and you, at least in my mind, I tried to live up to that and tried to achieve that. So that, to me, kind of became a normal, you know. I mean, it took quite a while for me, even at 16, to get to the point where I could even make 100 pots in a day, much less, you know, do that consistently. And I still remember to this day the first time that I made, how many ever clay balls I made for that day. May have been 50, it may have been 100. And when all of those clay balls turned into pots, and I didn't flop any for a whole day of throwing. And I remember that day still now. I remember thinking, man, I'm gonna do it. You know, I got, you know, 80 clay balls here, and they all turned into pots. I still, like I said, I don't remember what I was making, but I still remember that moment and that feeling. And it was such a victory for me that I didn't lose anything, you know, and I was probably only, like I said, 16 or 17 years old at the time that I did that. So, yeah, it's a pretty neat experience, and still being able to remember that is pretty cool. But I think, like I said, just having that background, and like I said, whether it was just me being a little naive and impressionable, and just being fortunate that I was in the position that I ended up being in, to work for a studio that was just very production oriented, which kind of forced me into a certain way of looking and thinking about pottery that I don't 100% adopt today, but I'm so glad I started that way, because of the way it taught me initially to look at pottery. And that was a way more, you know, production mindset to pottery than I even have now. But like I said, that gave me a foundation that I think hardly anybody gets, especially if you go to school, you know, for a degree in art or pottery or ceramics. You know, you're not, most of those programs are not taught, they're not teaching you to be a production potter. And not that the world needs, you know, a million production potters, but that's a great foundation, and there's no replacement for just throwing hundreds and thousands of pieces, and especially if you're trying to throw a bunch of things the same, that repetition, there is no replacement for it, and there's no amount of money that can buy you that experience other than just the grind and the hours of just trying it and practicing and practicing. And so for that, I'm very thankful for the way I started in pottery. So I'd say, just like every other craftsman or artist or artisan, you know, my foundation is probably a lot of the reason why I do what I do with my work, and, you know, why I may look at things in a way that's different to a lot of other potters or a lot of other, you know, ceramics artists or craftsmen in that sense. You know, especially when it comes to like trimming or things like that. I just never learned it. I never did it. And you know, when I took my kind of really simple ideas and my foundation in pottery, and I look at things like, you know, my ability to make a bowl and make a foot on a bowl without having to trim the bottom, it's not that I'm against, you know, any of that or that I don't like it. It's just that I look at it in a very simple way of like, well, which way is more efficient? And I don't think, okay, well, you know, I don't feel like I'm cheating anybody by not putting a foot on the bowl, and I'm not putting anybody else down that does put a foot on a bowl. I just think, hey, it shows my craftsmanship to be able to make a bowl or a pot and it be completely finished when it's done on the wheel, and this dries on the bat and it comes off. I barely have to do anything to that because I've cleaned up around the bottom of the pot. When that comes off, I probably don't even really have to even trim around the edge of the bottom, but I do, because I do care a lot about my craftsmanship, and that's probably, you know, changed over the years too. Now that I'm, you know, of course I sounds like my voice cracked a little bit there. Am I a teenager again? Talking about my past is bringing it back, but I care a lot about my craftsmanship and the quality of my work. And that's, you know, not that I didn't before, but that's something that I've grown in appreciation for as I've gotten more and more refined in my personal work. And then even the work I did for other people. I never took huge shortcuts. I didn't want to like just make junk for other people because I wasn't going to be selling it myself. I knew that I made it, and I wanted to put quality into everything I made, even if I wasn't selling it personally. And so that's just who I wanted to be and what I wanted to produce. And now that I make my own work that has my name on the bottom, I'm glad that I have, you know, turned that corner. Not that, like I said, the work that I made in the past was horrible, but I do care a lot about the craftsmanship. But I still have that very practical side of my brain that says, you know what, what's the most efficient way that I can do this? Because I also subscribe to the idea of working smart and not just hard. I don't mind working hard, as you guys can see right here. I'm gonna stand here until I get 100 of these little vessels done, and you know, that's hard work. Most potters I know probably wouldn't stand here and make 100 pots at one time, and so you could say that's hard work. I'm also talking to you guys while I'm doing that, so that's helping a little bit, but you know, I don't mind working hard. I've had days where I work 12, 14, 16 hours in a day, and that's working hard. But honestly, at the same time, if you're enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't feel a whole lot like hard work. You know, I also am thankful that I have just a pretty high energy level just naturally. You know, I enjoy my coffee, but I don't really enjoy it because I'm like, I can't function without it. Once I get going on something, man, I can just keep going as long as I'm not getting bored or, you know, not just getting extremely exhausted. But I'm thankful that I have a pretty high energy level and I can keep going. So this video is not necessarily going to teach you anything specific about a certain kind of pot or how to do a specific thing, or other than maybe just work your butt off and no, not really. Just work hard and you know, practice a little production, because I think it'll help you. if I was to tell anybody that would ask me, hey, what's the one thing that I can do to help my skills as a potter advance, I'd be like, man, you need to just throw some production. You know, it maybe is less fun than throwing artistic and creative things, but I'll tell you, it'll make everything else you do with clay better. It really will, because now I think my skill as a potter is really based on the fact that I spent all those years just throwing massive amounts of clay. I know there was one point just a few years ago where I was only working for 2 other potters. You know, I wasn't making anything for myself at that point, but I was working for 2 potters, and I was throwing 600 pounds a week for one and 400 pounds a week for the other. And I was doing that Monday through Friday, week in and week out. And I don't know, probably a year or 2 years I did that straight. And, you know, but probably at the end of that time, I guarantee you I was better at making pots and my general skill at working with clay than I was when I started. And that's just from my familiarity with the clay and getting used to it, and just that repetition that develops skill. So anyway, like I said, this video is probably getting long by now because I've just been talking. But that's what I did. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to set the camera up and just talk while I'm making these, and we'll see what comes out of it. And I thought, you know what, let's talk a little bit about my roots in pottery and where I came from, for you guys that don't know. And you know, hopefully you guys will enjoy it and get something out of it one way or another. If nothing else, you'll get to know me a little bit better and know where I come from, and maybe understand a little bit more about maybe sometimes when I say or do a thing a certain way, maybe be like, oh, I know why he did that now. And maybe it's not just a mystery, and it's not just like, you know, this or that or the other, like I said. Anyway, this is probably going to have a little bit more of a live stream feel to it, without the live questions and answer, which I enjoyed that live stream I did the other day, and I think I'll definitely do more of those. I got to figure out the best time of day to do those, because I definitely want most people that are interested in watching those to be able to have access to them and actually watch them live, so that you can ask questions and get answers. So I'll probably try them at different times of the day, and I'll probably just do those in between. As long as I can keep up my schedule of my regular videos, I'll just add live streams in here and there as an extra bonus, because I really don't have to do the production afterwards when I do a live stream. So that will save me some of the extra time and energy. It won't literally take that much out of my schedule per se of making pots to do a live stream. So anyway, as always, I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate all the support and the subscriptions. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching this, please do that. It definitely helps me and helps this channel, and will help my income and my revenue through YouTube. It'll help me to continue doing what I'm doing. Hit the like button. You know, that helps me get recommended in other videos. If my videos are viewed more often, and they get thumbs up, and they have good reviews, they'll get more likely to be recommended in other videos. It just helps the channel in general, and to be honest with you, the more benefit I see out of this, as I said, about my just kind of simple-mindedness, in the sense that I'm very practical. The more I see something working, the more I'm gonna do it. So I really enjoy making these videos, and I appreciate all your support. I really love you guys and appreciate you. And so, yeah, that'll do it. I'm going to stand here and make the rest of these, about 46 more of these that I've got left to make. And, yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate your support. Bye.